Good evening and welcome. I'm Roy Blitzer and our show is Ask Dr. Business. The purpose of our time together is to give you information and insight that will help make your work life a little more rewarding and exciting. The topic that we've been running for the past few months is first jobs, and we're very fortunate to have with us John Young, a real estate sales professional and real estate developer who's going to talk about his career and his first job and the experiences that he's had from that and other jobs that he's had in the future. Please don't hesitate to call. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. And the purpose of our time is that you're going to get information from John and the callers that will help make your world a little more exciting during the day. John, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Roy.
I'd like it if you please tell our audience exactly your background. Where are you from? What did you study? Your academic career, and how did you get to where you are now?
Sure. Okay. Well, that's a long story. So
we have all half an hour.
In the beginning, the Earth was a primordial ooze, and eventually I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Right, son of a pediatrician, and life was normal. I was a kid in Canada. I kind of wanted to go out into the world. I eventually, in long story short, found my way to Queen's University in Canada, Columbia Business School in New York City.
Where was Queen's located, by the way? Were you, is that
Kingston,
a hometown?
Ontario, Canada.
So you had to move.
Oh yeah. But wait, and then the quick summary, and then we can go into some details, is that eventually after 15 years in tech, specifically making online games, I changed my business entirely and became a realtor and a real estate developer. And I'm now working with my wife, building luxury houses and buying and selling and building houses in Palo Alto and Atherton.
Now, did you go to private school or public school?
Yeah, so way back to the beginning, it was public until grade 7, maybe, and then I went to a private school. And I was convinced that I must have been the dumbest kid in the class because I got waitlisted to get in, and then they let me in. So that was proof positive to me that I was the most intellectually inferior of the whole litter.
I'm sure that we know the crapshoot of getting into these prestigious institutions. You may be harsh with yourself.
Well, so what I realized later was that it's because it was a boys' school up until the year that until grade 9 where I applied. So they were letting in lots of girls from the other schools in Winnipeg.
And you had tougher competition.
But essentially all the boy slots were filled unless someone dropped out. Someone did drop out, and so I got a chance to go in. Now, all the other guys thought I was some kind of Sengali because I knew how to talk to women, whereas they had been isolated from women, and I was friends with some of the only women who came from my school. They couldn't believe, so it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Well, tell me a little bit about that first job. You can start about the jobs that you had before your first professional job. Our audience will get a kick out of hearing a little bit about what you've done.
So first job is a kind of a funny concept. I mean, it depends on your definition. On the one hand, at 12 years old, I had a paper route after school. You know, and a variety of sort of volunteer things where you're just chipping in and trying to build something and not necessarily getting paid, but it felt fun to do things like that, like making a video. It's not really anyone's paying me to be a movie maker, but it's just like, it was a lot of effort. We had script writers, we had music, we did a bunch of stuff. I was in the Canadian infantry, commissioned as a second lieutenant.
Well, that's a job. That's another job.
It was. I got out. I realized I wasn't really. It wasn't really the sort of intellectual experience.
It wasn't like the American system where you had to give them a certain amount of years?
No, this was like the equivalent of the militia, where I did like officer training and then realized I didn't actually like this too much, and then I got out, and so I wasn't really on the hook to give them years of my life. Did you learn
anything from that job in the military that you can pass on to our viewers?
I mean, so many things, but they're often of a kind of a physical toughness nature. You know, being tear gassed, right? Never being so angry, never being so sleep deprived. You know, hallucinating because you've just been on maneuvers for days.
Well, you probably learned you didn't want to do that for a living, I'm sure.
Yeah, it made me realize that I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my career and life.
Smart man. Let me volunteer our callers to call and bring you some questions. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. And I'm here talking with John Young, who's relating experiences on his first jobs. Right now, he's a real estate sales professional and a real estate developer, but he's had a variety of jobs before getting to this point in his career. Talk about your first professional job, the one that perhaps when you were a little more seasoned than the ones you've described so far as the newspaper boy.
Well, a lot of my 20s were spent in pursuit of just hedonism and experience, and this is cool, let's do it. You know, let's go tree planting in northern British Columbia. Let's join the military. Let's go to Japan and,
a lot of
and
good
teach
sense
English
of
in Japan.
adventure you had.
Right, absolutely. You know, I was very kind of romantic and eclectic.
How long did each one of these jobs last, John, would you say?
Oh, you know, in the case of tree planting, you know, 3 months. In the case of Japan, 3 years.
So you taught in the Japanese system?
Yeah, yeah. I flew over on the whim because after getting out of film school, which is essentially what I majored in undergrad.
This is before graduate school.
Yes. I met some guy who hired me on to video his, and make a documentary out of his tour with 6 Japanese women. And I couldn't fathom, like, how does this happen to you? How do you get 6 Japanese women on the other side of the world and you're taking them around like Quebec City and Ottawa and Toronto and giving them a tour of Canadian life and you're making money off of this? What's going on? And he said, the more you look like a Californian in Japan, the more successful you'll be. I can help you get started. So I flew over with him for my new life in Japan. He checks his audio cassette tape recorder as soon as we get to his apartment, because that's the way they did it back then. And he realizes, oh, my girlfriend's in town. Oh, that's unexpected. You can't stay with me.
So you had to find a place to live.
So I had one night of like shelter on the other side of the world, and then I had to make it work.
One of the things you may have learned in this is resilience. You certainly had an ability to rebound from adversity if you had no place to live.
My motto back then was the only failure is going home empty-handed.
Okay, so talk a little bit about the learnings and the takeaways from this job of teaching English in Japan.
Well, I suppose was fortunate because I had a lot of enthusiasm.
Well, you're a pretty cheery guy even tonight.
The students seemed to like me, and I think the head of the company, who would every once in a while sit in and sort of audit the teachers and make sure they're doing the right things, he sort of plucked me and said, like, I want you to teach in Shinjuku a lot, because that was the head office. And we, in Shinjuku, were much more likely to do the trial lessons, the demo lessons, right, to hook people into joining and buying the coupon system that this business had. And I got to do a lot of this, of, you know, putting on the show, the Dog and Pony show and the Razzmatazz, and, you know, maybe the other teachers were like what I was demonstrating, or maybe they weren't. But it let me feel that I got some sort of distinction and privilege out of being recognized, because I was kind of hardworking. I always did what I said I was going to do. You know, I showed up on time. I was never a no-show.
Well, these are the same things you probably learned when you were a newspaper boy.
Yeah, I guess so. And those are kind of enduring aspects of a job. I mean, as a realtor today, you know, no one's forcing you to do anything.
That's true.
So it's a lot of internal fortitude and just wanting to do it because it's the right thing. It's the disciplined thing. It's the honorable thing, right? Like at some point, you've got to have these internalized and just conduct your life that way.
Talk a little bit about the post-Japan career, your learnings from the jobs that you had there.
So in Japan, I became convinced that I needed to go to grad school, that it was the next stage in my evolution. And so I convinced another friend to believe the same thing. And we traveled around Asia together. We backpacked around the world, and we got back to Canada. And I really wanted to go to Columbia. They said you need calculus within the last 5 years. I didn't have it. I was too naive to try to exempt out of it or persuade them that that was a silly requirement. And I just went back to school for an academic year. And there I discovered the internet, because a university library in 1996 had like a couple of web browsers. And I thought, this is the most fascinating thing. You know, instead of making a CD-ROM coffee table book of our adventures traveling around the world with my buddy, we could make a website, but we were scratching our heads like, but how do you make money off a website? There's no payment mechanisms. There's
But you
nothing.
figured out a way, I'm sure.
So I built a website in '96, and then I got a job out of, and that was my career arc for the next 8 years, was basically convincing people the internet is big. It's going to be big. Look what you can do with it. Look how this is. And it needed a lot of persuasion in the early days.
Well, speaking of persuasion, let me see if I can persuade a few people to call and ask you a question about those first jobs that you've had. The number here is 650-856-1491. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Roy Blitzer, and our show is Ask Dr. Business. The series we're running this next few months is First Jobs, and John Young is here with me talking about his career. Right now, he's a real estate sales professional, real estate developer, but he's had a fascinating career, and starting off as a newspaper boy.
Yeah, do everything, kids. Just
perfect advice.
Live life. It's not long enough, so you might as well do it all.
Well, that was going to be my next question, since we haven't had one called in yet. What advice would you give someone starting off at their first job? What would you tell her or him to do?
Do anything that you can thrive at for at least a year. And it pretty much doesn't matter what. What you need to prove to the world is that somebody trusts you, that you can show up at work, that you can learn, that you can be entrusted with greater responsibilities, that you're proactive, that people can stomach you and hopefully like you in a workplace, and that you're just not rejected for being defective in any of these categories.
We have a caller here. This is Dr. Business. How can I help you?
Yes, hello. My name is Rana, and I have a question. Am I on the air now?
You are, Rana. Please ask your question. I think our guest and I would like to hear it.
Okay, well, I have a question of if a woman who has a bachelor's degree but has been out of the workforce raising children and needs to go back into the workforce, maybe thinking about a career in real estate, what would your guest suggest?
Oh.
I like the question, and thank you for bringing it up. You're on now, John.
Okay, well, real estate is an awesome third career for anybody.
Speaking of first jobs, he thinks it's your third career. Great idea.
I've gotten in my chronology up to like job number 7, but there's like 15 more to go before I got to real estate. But real estate is a great career for people in Rana's situation because, well, first of all, the barriers to entry are low. You take a couple of classes, you pass a couple of courses, you get certified by the state, and you convince a brokerage to let you hang your license with them. And then you're an entrepreneur, right? So everything depends on like how charming are you? You know, where do your clients come from? You know, like how willing are you to sort of get up out of bed and do whatever it takes to add value into people's lives and know the market to the point where someone entrusts you with the first chance to represent them.
And this person is a re-entry. She has been hypothetically raising her children, wants to have a job that provides perceived flexibility. What kind of counsel would you give her in terms of lifestyle or information, etc.?
Well, just on the skills, if I could first, is that I was surprised getting into real estate how little of a shift it was from a 15-year arc making online games, right, in the tech space, right? Silicon Valley, companies doubling in size every year, and none of them are around today, right? Like it's just the mercurial startup scene that sort of is ambient around Palo Alto. But real estate was, I thought, nothing like that. But when I got into it, I realized, like, wait, project management fundamentally is the same kind of stuff, right?
Which is running a home, project management.
Client service, right? Like being attuned to the emotions of the person you're talking to. Just understanding what people are going to want and how you provide it, right? Like doing what you say you're going to do, being data-driven and having the facts at hand. Like a lot of these things are kind of abstract skills that you can bring with you from whatever you did before and into real estate.
Do you think it's harder, in Rana's question, to bring something from having been at home, working as a full-time partner in running a household?
No, not necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
it's really, and there's real estate is interesting because so many people have different ways to sort of skin the cat, right? And if you were to get into real estate, Roy, your kind of clients who would gravitate to you would be very different than mine.
That's true. And so would a working woman entering the force again.
Yeah, yeah, and that is a not atypical entry path in. I mean, there's way more women in real estate than men.
Well, the one thing I want to add to my wonderful question is the concept of perceived flexibility and availability. I think that the reality of the workload for real estate is very difficult, and people perceive that you can do it at home and you can rear your children and you can pick them up at school. Talk a little bit about how hard it is to work in real estate, especially if you have other family demands.
Yeah, well, I kind of write down on a piece of paper every morning, I am second most important. Because it's easy to say, clients come first, but it's harder to say, it's like, but wait, as really did happen, I'm taking my child to the emergency room at Stanford because they had a concussion and they threw up twice, and now I get the call? Right?
That's true.
And this happened to my wife, who's also a realtor, and she said, I have to take this. And so I'm taking care and, getting us checked into the hospital and stuff, but she is closing a $20 million deal. You've got your choice at the time. Like, it's easy not to take the call. It's easy to define your life and sort of set a work-life balance that, this is my family time. But if you want to do the right thing by your client, if you want to bring in all available opportunities, if you want to excel to your max, you take that call. And then it's a tough balancing act. Like, how do you draw that line to let your personal life have some space? It's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration.
Well, one of the other things, Rana, that I think is most important is your concept of who your network is. Real estate is a relationship business. If you've been spending all of your life at home and rearing children, you may not have the network, the people that you need to know that will hopefully come to you when you're ready to re-enter the workforce. So that's another thing.
Well, it depends who you've been hanging out with.
That is very true.
I mean, many successful realtors, the base of their career is the fact that they were, that they went through the school system in an area, and that's their chosen area that they're going to be servicing. So, and they were active in their community. And there's one great realtor who was the coach of the Pally football team, and it's like everyone knows him as coach, right? So, wow, he's got that trusted authority figure, and he transitioned that into his professional life, and that works for him. I don't have that.
No.
I'll have something else.
I hope so.
But different people can find their people.
Rana, I hope that answered your question satisfactorily.
Well, I think it was very interesting, made me think about that career, and
I want to thank you for calling and wishing you best of good luck.
okay, thank you very much.
Take care. I want to also remind you that we have about 7 to 8 minutes left. Our phone number here is 650-856-1491. Our topic is first jobs, and we're very fortunate to have a knowledgeable colleague in real estate now, but who's talked about his first jobs that he's had to get there. John, tell us a little bit about what skills, what you're looking for if you're hiring someone for a first job. What qualities do you want?
I want I don't care about like domain skills so much. I can teach that, but I need the basics of diligence and commitment and doing what you say you're going to do, and willingness to learn.
How does one describe that and do that right away?
Well, some of it's going to come across on your just interpersonal demeanor.
Exactly.
Right? Like we've got an interview. Like,
Also,
do you
the
show
first
up on
week
time?
of work.
Are you taking it seriously? Are you respecting the situation you're in? If somebody walks in and says, like, with an air of self-entitlement and arrogance, it's probably getting off on the wrong foot.
So
and maybe you've got a bright future in it, but like it'll be over there, not right here.
Diligence,
because I can't put up with that.
Diligence, doing what you say you want to do. What else?
It's just getting things done
skills.
in whatever it takes, right? I mean, we have a small team. Like, our business is essentially 3 of us. And then we've got a network of all these other people. But You know, you go into a house, there's a dead bug, that died while no one was in the house, and it's there on the floor.
And someone has to clean it up.
Yeah, I'm cleaning it up, right? You walk into a place, you're going to flush the toilets. Why? Because what good can come from that toilet? You just better flush it, right? Like, did my Ivy League degree prepare me for this?
No.
No, but it's got to be done because this is in a sub-perfect state, so I'm blowing the dust buster and the dust is flying
So
back at
there's
me.
a lot of garbage work you have to be willing to do in a job. I agree.
Yeah, and I don't even think of it as garbage work. I just think, like, here's a situation. It's less than the way it needs to be. I'm the man on deck. I would delegate it if I could, but like there's often not enough time or not enough people, and you just got to get it done.
Talk a little bit about interpersonal skills, listening, learning, the other things that when we were prepping for our time together, you talked about the things that you took away from those first jobs that you had. Listening skills, learning, and interpersonal skills.
It can't be said enough how valuable listening is. So many clever things can be done if you just ask the other person to say, what are you looking for?
Exactly. And
in
if you're in a
realtor?
first job,
Tell me
you
about
need
the
to...
other time you sold a house. What went right? What didn't go right? If you could wave a magic wand, how would this process go? I mean, if you can just let the other person talk, which, I mean, I'm not doing in this situation because I guess you're asking me other questions, but
Well, that's part of the deal here.
Life will become so much easier if you could just have telepathy into what the other person is thinking or wants. And you know what? You can do that by just asking them what they're thinking or what they want.
Asking good questions, listening. I also like the concept, if you're new at a job, to be able to follow through with what you say, do what you say you need to do, and the concept of being trustworthy and reliable. Those are intrinsic things that surface right when you start working.
When you're new on a job, you should assess who is good, who do you respect, think about why, and try to either passively absorb what it is that they're doing right and make it yours, or just ask them, can I shadow you? Can you teach me? Can you mentor me? Because I see things in you that I want to be, and we should be humble about who we are, and we're always a work in becoming something else.
Well, you also talked about passion. I think that's something else I would want our audience to hear about. When you're in a first job or a new situation, you have to telegraph energy and interest and wanting to do what they want you to do.
Yeah.
I think that's important. By the way, we have about 4 minutes left. I'm going to be like the shopping network and see if we can get another call in. The phone number is 650-856-1491. I'm Roy Blitzer. Our show is Ask Dr. Business, and our guest is John Young, a real estate salesperson, professional, and real estate developer who's been talking about his first job. And we've learned a lot from what he has to say and the kinds of things he's looking for. As we begin to wind down our time together, why don't you look at the things that you've done and see if there was anything you might do differently in any of those, quote, first jobs that you had?
I might have been more focused on a professional life earlier. I was kind of adventuring,
but I think that's a sense
through
of
a
charm,
lot of my
having
20s.
adventure, right.
Yeah, and it was great. The thing is, if you change something, you'll never, it'll change the future and butterfly wings and chaos theory, and I would never be here with you, Roy, if I took the other path down the road.
And they say we shouldn't have any regrets in life, so that's a good base to begin.
And the thing is, I think looking backwards is the wrong way to think about it, because it can't happen, but we have the choice right now to become something else. Now is a great time to begin again. So if you want to change something, just start doing it now.
I agree.
It's never too late. The world is changing so fast. The tools are changing. The market is changing. You can invent yourself starting right now.
Are there any skills that you think, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, which have been very helpful, even with Rana's question, is the concept of intrinsic, innate characteristics and character. Are there any skills that you would need for a job that you can either get through school or get through a course, etc.?
I mean, sure, be literate, be numerate. I think there's these abstract skills, but the thing, the things that I learned in my 20s, you know, like learn how to do video editing and Adobe Premiere, you know, learn the ins and outs of setting up a RAM drive on a Mac notebook. Like, they're irrelevant. Like, they're just swept away.
We have
right?
another caller. This is Dr. Business. How can I help you?
Yes, my name is Rick,
Hi, Rick.
and I have an 18-year-old son who thinks that perhaps he doesn't want to go on to college. What advice would you have for him?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. We have 2 minutes left. I'll let my esteemed guest go first.
Personally, I'm a fan of college. I think it's, if nothing else, if you say, oh, I'm not there for the intellectual experience of broadening my mind, and I don't see the point of it, I think there's still, even in today's world, a pretty good factor, like that hiring managers are going to think that there's some mark of quality there that, well, I can't be faulted. You know, the kid was from Harvard, or, you know, whatever it is. The kid is from, you know, the lowliest college. It's still better than the kid who isn't from the lowliest college, right? And it's true that you're self-made, and what have you done lately? And if your son can, you know, code up in a virtuoso manner, you know, like a computer app that integrates artificial intelligence and the animation, like, he'll be able to make his way in the world. But I'd say, you know, that's relying heavily on talent, and I would want to shift the odds in his favor.
We have 1 minute left, and I want to add my 2 cents. I think college gives you a chance to hang out with people who may have the same interests as you do. So your concept of being around interesting people, you learn how to read, you learn how to go to theater and appreciate literature. I think college sort of polishes what is there and makes it more exciting for you.
What about the crazy different people who
Well,
you never
those are-
conceived of?
Yeah,
like, you're
those
going
are
to
the
encounter
people
them
you need.
too,
You need
right?
them as well. But I would encourage your colleague and your son and his friends or her friends that college gives you an entry ticket. It doesn't do anything except get you the stamp for getting in. The rest is up to you, but I think it's a wonderful experience to learn to be on your own and live honorably, etc. By the way, our show is over. I want to thank my guest, John, for being a terrific partner. I want to remind everyone that we're back on the air February 20th. Our show is again going to be First Jobs, and we're having Susan Brown, who's a professional salesperson, who's going to talk about her first job and how she got to be where she is. I want to shout out to my gracious crew, to thank everybody, and to wish everyone a very happy 2020. That's the end of our show, and best of good luck in your career and in your first job.